With the season 7 premiere now less than 2 months away, I couldn't help but wonder at the many differences there will be between book 6 ending and the 7th book as compared to what we'll see on screen for the 7th season. Don't get me wrong, as a whole the books and the television series align very well with each other in tone and characterization. We get a very many of the exact same plots and subplots, and of course the characters are very nearly on point in many respects. But when an author dreams up a character, it's going to be hard to find an exact replica of that fictional character in an actor physically, and storytelling in books is done very differently than on screen. So anyone who's ever read a book and then seen the movie or vice versa can tell you each experience is very different. From the pace of the story to the loss of characters and details or the invention of others to attempt to match the tone of a plot, well, there are just some unavoidable differences. This is a game I love to play with my kids with the Harry Potter book series. I had a rule. We had to read the book before we saw the movie. This rule came about before the 3rd movie when my 3 older kids were old enough to either listen while being read to for longer periods or read the books themselves. And then we would compare and lament over the lost bits or strange changes. Hermione's hair, the loss of the hospital scenes, just details really. In Outlander, Diana was very picky about who would make her books into a visual medium, and mostly because there is just so much story. Condensing it would be nearly impossible if one wanted to maintain the actual story being told. And while Sony, Starz, and all involved should be credited with the outcome, there are still some nagging and some fantastic differences worth noting. For better or for worse, here are my 5 top differences between Book 1 and Season 1 of Outlander, and yes, I'm saving my favorite for last. Gayless and Claire's relationship, namely Geillis' of Claire to get answers. When it comes to their friendship, there was a more natural flow to it in the books. Yes, of course, these 2 women with a common interest and possibly more open minds than those around them would be drawn into a friendship, but I think this played out so much better in the books. And when Geillis attempted to coax some answers from Claire through herbal assistance, that particular scene was well written. I was sad to see it pretty much gone in the show. Though because of how details are given differently written than visually, I could see why it was lost as well. Frank. Okay, I know no one likes Frank. On screen he was cold. As Tobias played him, I could see Frank's position. But in the books, he's depicted much more clearly as, well, an ass. That little scene in the first episode where he's forgiving her for any indiscretions, it's really more of a confession to his own dalliances, wartime and all. But his actual personality is glossed over in the series on television, making him a bit easier to watch and making Black Jack seem that much worse in comparison. Which was, I believe, purposeful, but caused Frank on screen to lose some of that callousness, the violent nature, and made him more sympathetic than Frank is in print. Jamie's overall look. The beard specifically for me. Don't get me wrong, Sam is a big guy and every bit matches the physique of a Highlander, I feel. Not that I really know. With the exception of the actual show Highlander, my Scotman comparison is limited, and lack actual Scots now that I think of it. However, when reading the description of Jamie for the first time, all I can say is I openly admit I was absolutely pleased the series creators had gone a different direction. Because Book Jamie, not anything I'd swoon over. And I don't just mean in looks, he was too abrasive as well. I've got a complaint coming up for Book 3 later on, but I'll leave that till later. The wolf fight. I really wish they had put this in the show. It was one of the real hero moments for Claire, as she had only herself to rely on. I'm sure because of the animal involvement and the fact it was one detail in a large plot that it could be dropped without losing the core of the story, namely save Jamie. So story-wise, that harrowing event was an easy bit to lose, and really it didn't change the actual story much, but I truly wanted to see Claire face down the wolves. And I think Katrina would have played it beautifully. Now, if you also happen to check out my standout scenes and reviews for Trek, you know I love to throw in an honorable mention. And even though I have one more item left on my list, I couldn't help but throw in Murtagh. His character was played up a little bit more on the television series, and I'm so pleased it was because it was such a pleasure to have him around longer than expected. Involved more than in the books, and I have come to really adore Duncan, so I'm just glad he was written in a way that allowed us to not just have the character longer, but get him involved in some great storylines in later seasons. And for my top change, and one I'm really glad of, the sensual scene at the end of the book in the caverns. I can't even express how wrong that scene felt while reading it. I mean, it was just incredible to think someone used that badly would be all up, pardon the pun, for romance that soon. I don't really care if it was part of the cure. It just bothered me. And on this one, I do not think I would feel any different having read the books before seeing the show. And those are the big changes between season 1 and book 1 of the Outlander series I think were really smart, or at least I could see why it had to be done. And a reminder, I did read book 1 and 2 after I'd seen those seasons. I didn't read the full series until after season 2's airing, so my view may be different from those who enjoyed them in the opposite order. So which changes did you notice when reading or watching for the first time? Were there any I didn't mention you thought made a bigger impact or think I should have put on a list? Let us know in the comments. It's a good chance to mull over the ins and outs with other fans, and feel free to let me know what you'd like to see included on the list for Book 2 versus Season 2. And until my next update, you can always delve into more Droughtlander goodness right here, and we'll see you there.